Yeah, no, of course, I can definitely start on that. I know Stephen was pretty interesting to learn and about the immigration. And first of all, we really want to thank you for taking the time and meet with us. And Greg and myself we're been in contact in terms with immigration policies, U.S. Waiver. I am currently just, in a nutshell, living in Canada, and I've been traveling and moving around several times. I'm originally born and raised in Romania, but lived and work and study both in Spain and now in Canada. So I switched quite a few of not only countries but continents as well.
Yes.
That's also in one of my summer school is when I actually met Greg long time ago. When I was always like to say I was young and restless, and and I met Greg, and my sister and I, we start exchanging some like we had some books from Greg, and then we start writing some articles about globalization, and always interested in this immigration because as an immigrant I experienced quite a bit of challenges to have the chance to work there, and so I was happy to hear that Greg mentioned that you are interested into this, because I can definitely relate on that, and happy to extend more on the personal side of things.
Yeah. When the Stoa topic was announced, my thought was, I'm not a world traveler, but I had been to France and Romania and Bulgaria and met a lot of, and maybe I'll talk about this in the beginning to give my background, because Marina and I have this separate recorded discussion of things, and we could cover some of the same ground, but I'll give just a little bit of my background and what I've sort of counseled debaters on this, which is, if you're debating U.S.-Europe policy, find a European, find somebody who's lived in Europe, and many debaters, some have been in the military, some have been on mission programs, have been to other countries. But anyway, so I'll talk about that. Maybe Steve, you might talk about being in American Logos with Abigail and traveling to Romania and being in a debate tournament.
Yeah. Well, I was never at Romania. So Abigail went, but I went to Germany and Czech Republic.
Okay, which is great. Other countries where they're also Europeans, right?
Yes.
So, and was it you or Abigail was telling the story that you talked to one of the other parents and saying that their kids had hit Abigail in an earlier round, and the other parents were shocked. You meant debated together, not hit. So praise.
Yeah.
Okay, well, why don't we start recording, and we can always edit out things that go sideways. We'll see how it goes, and maybe Steve, you could start by laying the background of monument members that you have posted on your list for members, a case on the visa waiver, and we can talk about how that came from First Look and Radu and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Sure. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. My name's Steve Vaughan, and we have a few special guests. We've got Greg Rehmke, and we have Marina. And how do you pronounce your last name, Marina?
Tanase.
Tanase. Okay, I was going to be close, but I am the owner of Monument Publishing, and this is being posted not only on Monument, but probably will be on Economic Thinking as well. And this year, the debate resolutions for team policy include, for Stoa, the United States federal government should significantly reform its policy toward one or more countries in Europe. And for NCFCA is that the United States federal government should significantly reform its import-export policy in regard to foreign trade, and so or international trade. And so both of these will have a take on this. We have Marina here, who is a Romanian national living in Canada, and we're going to be talking with her to get a little bit of a hands-on first account view of just what it takes to get out of Romania and to go other places, depending on whether it's a passport or a visa or anything like that. And Greg's here. He and Marina have known each other before, and Greg is going to be our economic expert in this, because there's always something economic involved in debate. And we have Marina, who's graciously come and is going to be talking about the visa waiver, immigration, different types of visas, passports, and all of that. And a lot of this will relate to just how we're going to debate this year. So, Greg, why don't you tell us how you and Marina first met, and then we'll get to Marina.
So after the fall of communism, there were a whole lot of people in Eastern Europe that what they knew about the West is sort of what their government told them. And there was a program called the Institute for Economic Studies Europe that started each summer to have week-long seminars on economics and freedom ideas for mostly Eastern Europeans. So many of these were held in the south of France, and Bulgarians, Romanians, Poles, Czechs would come over by bus and later airplane to attend these. And I met Marina at a program that was in, I think, Varna, Bulgaria. And it was an adventure for me to get to that. It was fun, but at a week-long program with other scholars from different countries, talking to, Romanians, Bulgarians, there were students from Turkey and Russia, and we were talking about economics and economic freedom. And anyway, we kept in touch since. And Marina and her sister, her twin sister, had moved to Spain, and then later Marina came to Canada. And when it came up that we had Radu Nikita, an economist from Cluj, speak at the First Look program, and he mentioned the Romanian waiver program, the Romanian visa program, that Romanians had to meet in person to get a permit to come to the US, unlike anybody else in Europe. That's what led to students deciding to run this as an affirmative case. It's unjust. And in our conversation before we started, Marina talked about, wanderlust, wanting to see the world, but governments decide what you can see and when, even as a tourist. And so why not fix that?
Yeah. So Marina, have you been to the United States, or have you just been as close as Canada to us?
Yes, thank you, Stephen, so much for having us. As mentioned, I really like your question, and I'm just smiling because it's a very funny case. Yes, I have been for the first time after living I would say 9 years in Canada, and I will tell you how I got there. And I actually went to Hawaii. That was just in December 2022. So you would probably think, you're so close. I'm living in Vancouver right now. Why wouldn't you even go and visit Greg in Seattle? Well, so that's an interesting story related to immigration and USA visa waiver here. I am a Romanian citizen, and as Greg mentioned, due to the fact that Romania is not part of the Schengen, we're actually not allowed yet to just go with an electronic visa, which literally takes a few seconds to get it, as other let's put an example, Spanish people, if they would like to travel. So I would need a visa. I would need to go through the whole process. I would need to go to even an interview, depending on the case, to go through the immigration policy, which I have to be honest, it's pretty tedious. So I did have an uncle in California, and he was always inviting me. But due to this restriction, I was really hesitant. And I was thinking, it's enough, too many papers, too many documents for just paying a visit of a few days, right? However, I am happy again that I'm right now Canadian citizen as well. I do have dual citizenship. And after 8 years of living in Canada and struggling quite a bit through some challenges and bureaucratic and admin stuff with the pandemic hitting as well, I managed to get the passport literally running up after a Canada tracking post in October. So then I was happy enough. My aunt and uncle, they do travel quite a bit to Hawaii, and they invited me up. But of course, I was always saying, I don't have that visa. Suddenly, me, Marina, being the same citizen, same values, same morals, same background, due to the fact that I actually obtained my Canadian passport, I was actually able to travel not even without asking for an electronic visa. They literally, I remember when I crossed the border, I was kind of afraid, and I was preparing all the questions, and my aunt actually told me don't be afraid. Don't come with this mentality as a Romanian that you'll still need the visa. Now you're a Canadian. And back in my mind at the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, I'm so happy I'm Canadian. But then I'm like, what did this change? Actually, I'm the same person, just I'm holding another passport. And I remember passing through the immigration. It was 22nd of December last year. And I was literally kind of shaking. I was like, oh my God, what if it's asking? What if I don't know how to answer? What if? And literally he looked, he started smiling. He saw my Canadian passport and he's like, yeah, what are you doing in Vancouver? Okay, you're ready to go. So really easy. But then it kind of made me sad in a sense, because I was looking back and I was wondering, literally didn't change anything. And my sister and I, we wanted to travel to New York, and we're actually planning this year in 2023. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can travel now to United States. Look at that. I was just holding another passport. And my sister like, wait a minute, but I don't have that passport. I'm still just Romanian, so I would need to pass through all the process. So just struggling through this, it's pretty challenging. And this kind of, and I don't want to go and make it too long, but this kind of goes hand in hand with a little bit a Canadian system that has the point system, right? They will always attract immigrants that accomplish certain points due to their education level, due to their foreign languages they speak, their experience, and then you obtain the Canadian citizenship, which right now it's pretty easy if everything is good. However, United States is afraid still of that immigration coming from Romania and Bulgaria, and they're afraid of the terrorism. They're afraid that they're getting their jobs, I assume. But it's interesting because probably they can also adopt the same system, so they have other controls. So I do believe there's an other control system that can be put in place, not just holding another passport. But yeah, that was my experience towards the United States.
And I think I'd add to that. So you've got the first case of fixing the limitations on Romanians wanting to travel. That would be a easy case. And I think one of the debate coaches said it has an advantage. It's simple. It's not a big complex with major repercussions. But second behind that is U.S. immigration policy is a disaster. Now, it's hugely controversial with immigrants from Latin America and students. That's a landmine that students don't want to step on in a debate round. But why not consider U.S. immigration reform with Europeans that would be topical, that would be based on the point system, much like the Canadian system is? Because there's huge economic benefits from more immigration, but the point system allows you to focus on economic benefits. It's not perfect, but you could argue it'd be a step in the right direction. Canada has benefited dramatically. So the students could take another step forward if they wanted to in improving labor mobility policy between the US and European countries.
So how does this point system work? Because if somebody's going to run something like that, are some things weighed heavier? Do you get more points for some things and less points for others? So could you explain a little bit on that, Marina?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that because I have been through the whole process waiting 3 years. So how the Canadian immigration policy works, it's basically if you come here, and that was my path with a student visa, and you get the chance to actually study in a Canadian university, and then you obtain a postgraduate work permit, valid in general for the number of years you take the course. Let's say, for example, a master, in my case, or a certificate, that would be for 3 years. Once you get that, you have the chance to apply for the permanent residency. And that's when the Canadian point system comes. There's an application, and what really matters, it's actually if you study at a Canadian university, you get quite a bit of points that will bump your score. So education is very important. Having the chance to work in a Canadian company, what it's so-called Canadian experience, as well. And the reason for that, it's because they are thinking, okay, we train you in a Canadian company. We want you to not leave and get that experience so that you can actually contribute to our system and to our economy, which I think it's pretty smart. Also, there's some professions that get more points depending on what the Canadian government needs at the time. For example, my uncle is an engineer, and when he came to Canada and he studied to convert his engineering degree obtained back in Romania, he actually got more points than myself, just because engineering, it's pretty, especially he's living in Alberta with oil and gas, so especially at the time there was a lack in this profession. Obviously, if you speak another language, one of them, of course, French, Canada being a bilingual country, then you'll get points as well. And if you have relatives or if you have family, and not taking for granted this, but as I was told that if you have a family here, it's you get more points just because Canadians in general, they don't have too much population. They do have the need of a workforce. Therefore, they incentivize people who procreate and they're in their families and they have a kid that can benefit. So basically, the persons who are retired, the percentage is less than the workforce that can actually, the active persons that can actually provide the taxes and all those things for pensions. So these are the main factors that actually allow you to get more points: education, experience, languages, and relatives or family.
So how many points do you need? Is there like a minimum number and that you would need to get to become a permanent citizen, permanent resident, or then become a citizen?
Yeah, it is. So there are different. So how Canada works, it's actually each province. Right now, I'm in Vancouver in British Columbia. Each province has its own path. So if I would be maybe in Alberta, the system points would be different at that time. And we have to think I applied for permanent residence in 2018. I think in 2016. And I obtained the residence in 2018. At the end, in general, it was a minimum score. This will always change. I can't remember the top of my mind, but I remember it was around 78, 98 from up to 105, I think. That was the minimum, and 105 was the max, I think. But it depends every year, and what it's important is how many candidates they have, the profession they require. So that's why I'm saying it's per province. Not every province has the same ranking system with points. And once you get that, if you apply for citizenship, then can be pretty straightforward. No need for points, no need for other things. But when you apply for Canadian citizenship, yes, of course, because I remember you have to also take a language test, whether it's French or English. Therefore, if you got a good score, then your points sum to your application and point score. If you get lower score, then will go less. So it's a range there, but yeah.
So do you speak French too?
I do speak French, just at an
Wow.
intermediate level, but yes, I do. Yes.
I'm illiterate in many languages, so.
Right. And Spanish as well. Marina took graduate school in Malaga, Spain, and lived there for a number of years. And so the Americans, with our English, many of us lack other languages. I'd comment too that, the point system, better than the US system, you could argue, but it's certainly not perfect. You have the government deciding who needs which points and how to get them. And, Marina, I don't know how much time she spent dealing with immigration lawyers, trying to figure out and this is time that she could have spent just working, earning money, helping Canadian economy and helping herself, and you have to deal with all this. I would mention one thing that's very interesting about it being provincial. Provinces are different. They have different, and the critics of the US system argue, in fact, that the states should be able to attract immigrants to that state. So Iowa is, depopulated. They'd like more people. Why shouldn't Iowa be able to bring in immigrants from other countries on work visas with their own system? Now, maybe that wouldn't be topical because it's states rather than the federal government, but you would argue in following the Canadian system, the US government would allow states to make their own choices. Have federalism, let states decide what circumstances and when they can have more people.
Yeah, I think constitutionally, though, that the citizenship and that type of thing is given to our federal government. And so, but if you're a citizen then in Vancouver, British Columbia, then are you not a citizen now of Quebec and Nova Scotia and all those others?
Oh, no, sorry. Maybe I will rephrase. In terms of permanent residency, the path that you apply for, it's provincial. So once you get the residency, you can actually move to any province. It's just that if you're in Alberta, maybe you'll need another points, but then you'll be able to travel and establish yourself wherever you want in Canada and work wherever you want. Therefore, you are a citizen of actually Canada, and the citizenship goes through the federal government as well. It's just the provincial points that allows you to go with one stream or another. Let's say, for example, if I would be in Alberta, maybe I will get the minimum would be 78 points at that time. But this does not imply that once I obtain that residency, which is actually going and especially criminal background and background check and all that verification, it's done by the federal government. It's just that the province has different streams that you can apply for.
Okay.
I should mention real briefly, when Marina refers to criminal background, it sounds as if she has a criminal background. No. She means not having a criminal background.
No, sorry.
You look so nice.
No, sorry. I mean, like all the background checks and everything that needs to be done, it's done. And the residency and the Canadian citizenship goes through the federal.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm understanding correctly, then Canada does not require a visa from Romania. You could go to Canada on a passport, or did you need a visa to get to Canada?
No, you actually don't need. You just need a passport, but you need also an application, and I do believe that US has as well for other citizens from the European Union, which is an electronic travel authorization, which honestly, it's just an online with a fee of, I think at that time was $7 Canadian, and then you can have that in a few moments.
Yeah. And I like to emphasize too, where we started with the very limited case of saying, let Romanians travel to visit the US, where they can see the sites, visit relatives, look around and think about it. And then they get to go home. And right now that's limited. It's more complicated than it should be.
Yeah.
A separate issue would be to apply to maybe attend a college here, where I have Romanian friends who, applied and attended university in the U.S. A friend of mine is now in a PhD program at Baylor University in economics. And so, but she visited America first, looked around, met relatives. So that's a step-by-step. And I reference this because in the Monument negative brief on this topic, which students have access to by paying you money, right? They can buy access to that. But one of the things it mentions is that though there's lots of economic benefits of immigrants coming here and working, the Romanian visa change is about travel. So you don't get those benefits of working, but on the other hand, you don't get the arguments against it. But people travel first. They look around, maybe they interview with companies and they decide, and then later they maybe apply to college or apply to get a job.
Yeah. Now, so being a Romanian citizen, could you have moved to another country in the EU and become a citizen of that country, so dual citizenship, and then use that instead of going to Canada? Is there a different process there? So why not move to France? I mean, you speak French, move to France, become a French citizen, and then all of a sudden your troubles are over. You can travel to the United States.
Yeah, so I love your questions. Yes, because you saw I'm a globetrotter, right? Yes, you can obtain. So I will put the case of Spain, actually. There's some countries in the European Union that you can actually obtain the citizenship. Now, it's way harder than Canada due to the fact that European Union is overpopulated. So it's very hard to get there. I remember for some countries, you have to stay in that country minimum to have lived there for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
for minimum 10 years. And then there's an admin process, pretty bureaucratic. But there's some countries that they actually do not allow you to have double citizenship, meaning Spain, for example. If my sister would have to take the Spanish citizenship, she needs to give up to the Romanian one. I heard that right now Romania, it's in some treaties with Spain, and hopefully we will get the double citizenship, but it's way more complicated. Now, if I would, let's say, be there in Spain and would have given up my Romanian citizenship and I would have taken my Spanish one, I could have come to Canada easier, but I would still need to apply at the time for work permit and go through this process. However, for visiting and for United States, I would have need just that electronic travel document, no need for Canadian for an immigration process and interviews and all these things. And I'm saying that because, for example, my sister boyfriend, he's Spanish, so he said when we proposed about New York to visit, he's like, "Oh yeah, of course, I can just apply. You have the Canadian passport." And my sister was like, "Wait a minute, how about me? I just have a Romanian one. I can't travel. I need to go through this process." So yes, would be easier with another citizenship to travel to US. If I'm not wrong, it's at this time just Romania and Bulgaria, due to the fact that they're not part of the Schengen.
And I add a little bit. I mean, I know students, they've got a lot going on. They're trying to graduate from college, high school. They're probably taking college credits and they're preparing for debate. And there's all these cases, but there's history behind this. Milton Friedman makes the case that the benefits of immigration sort of crash into the welfare state. So the reason the French don't want it easy to become a French citizen is you can retire with full benefits, I think, at age 62 in France. And in fact, they're rioting in the streets now as the French government
wanted to raise it.
Yeah, they want to get it to a little higher because it used to be people would die at 62. So the government was happy to provide benefits because people on average would be dead. And it was the same in Social Security. But now we lived into our 70s. And so it's the Social Security systems can't last. The welfare states are, as you students may know, they're not set up fiscally to last. But so that's why citizenship is hard. The separate case of labor mobility, if you could just go someplace and work and be treated like everyone else, that would be great. But the challenge Marina ran into is it's a package. I don't know if she's eager to vote for whoever's going to be Minister of British Columbia or this or that. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe she just wants to live her life and have the other sort of rights and obligations that Canadians have. But the citizenship comes in this whole package. And you could argue the Romanian visa let people come and travel, even if you had a 5-year renewable work visa, which is what the Kriebel Foundation in Colorado, the Red Card solution, has proposed. You have a 5-year work visa, people can come here and work. They spend 5 years, they pay their taxes, they earn their money. If they want to become a citizen, they can go through that process. But that doesn't stand in the way of them living, having an apartment. The challenge with traveling, seeing the world is, how many Romanians have enough money to spend a month traveling around the US, staying in hotels or Airbnb or even youth hostels? If you prevent them from working, it's much harder to travel. So for young people, the idea of working as you're traveling and seeing the world, they go hand in hand, and yet our labor issues prevent that.
So Marina, why do you think the United States is being so difficult with Romania? It can't be just terrorism. Is there other issues that you believe our government sees with Romania? What are some of the issues that you think there are?
You caught me off the guard here. To be honest, I didn't have the chance to visit so much United States due to the visa thing. And I don't have too much experience with interacting on the USA policies. I don't think it's just terrorism. I think it's also a combination of factors, some political interests, as well as probably some studies showing that we're just coming there, but we don't, even if we come as a tourist, we're Romania, it's still seen as a country that the poverty is pretty high. Therefore, we don't spend too much, so we don't contribute so much to the tourism. We don't contribute so much to the economy. We don't contribute too much to everything that it's related to trade when we go there, just because we don't have so much money. And also probably, I think that due to the fact that we're seeing still I don't like to use this word because I'm a Romanian, but let's put it this way, maybe a third world country in the middle kind of a thing. Maybe the fact that we will go there and after that we will remain there, we will get some jobs that maybe they're not in so much demand. Like, for example, USA can cover that with the population that and with the Americans. Therefore, the rate of unemployment will increase. So I assume many of these factors, there are a lot of factors, but mostly I would say that we're still kind of a country in poverty. So that's that fear that we're going to stay there illegally as well and contribute to illegal work and all of that related things.
In the case, the sort of rule is that people apply to come to the U.S. and some are turned down because the officials think they're going to stay illegally. So the actual data is that Romanians that apply are turned down higher than some percentage. So therefore, Romania doesn't qualify. And that's partly because people historically have been very poor. The economic benefits of, staying, are to the people very, very high. There's huge numbers of people from Africa that are in the United States illegally, but they came here. The income is so much better. Their lives are so much better. They're sending money back to Africa, but it makes it very difficult to approve young people to come over because they figure they're going to stay because the incomes are so much higher here. And I think the same issue, Romania and Bulgaria historically were very poor, just much poorer 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
And just to circle back here, Greg, this reminds me of my first incident that I had first when I applied to Canada, to come to Canada on a student visa. I came here and I studied actually environmental law. The first student visa was refused to me, was denied on the grounds that I don't present any guarantee that I will come back at that time. And that was 2015. So yeah, I was quite surprised to kind of see that reason, but nothing else, no detail on it. So yeah.
Yeah. And there's a long history to that, but again, it's the challenge of labor mobility and for welfare states, if you have a place where you can go and qualify for benefits, the fear is poorer people will come and take advantage of those systems. Now, the data show that people come, they work harder, they're highly productive, they're less likely to take welfare, partly because the qualifications are limited. The benefits are overwhelming, but again, I think most Americans are traumatized by the ongoing disputes at the southern border and people coming in illegally.
Is there a concern, though, then if we get rid of our visa, or if we use the visa waiver program for Romania, then the more wealthy people will end up leaving Romania, they come to the United States, and we leave Romania in even worse poverty than it was before?
This is the brain drain view that you're going to drain the top people. And there are huge numbers. A lot of the Romanian students I met at the IES Europe workshops are now in London in finance or in Belgium or in other places working for various firms. And Marina, in Canada, Christina, her sister, working in Madrid. But on the other hand, data shows that those qualifications that allow you to leave the country and work in other places are a huge motivation for Romanians to learn fluent English, so they have the option. And so it's a motivating factor. And now, of course, Microsoft and a lot of tech companies have major offices in Bucharest where they're hiring lots of Romanians there who speak English and who have Western, skills and so forth.
And I'm just wondering, to reply with a question, why this USA visa, when it comes to Romania, wasn't so debatable when we come to talk about other countries such as Germany or Spain or France. Why just with Romania, right? It kind of makes me laugh.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, I'm just asking questions from, being more of like a devil's advocate kind of thing. And go ahead.
Well, as a background on this too, there's the story of the old Europe and the new Europe. The old Europe, Spain, France, England, Germany, where everyone seems to have negative views of America, of cowboy capitalism and lack of regulation, and these crazy homeschoolers that don't even send their children to school, and there's too many Christians and all these crazy things from the view of older Europe, which is very welfare state, very socialist with declining economies, low birth rate. But formerly communist Europe, Romania, Poland, former Czechoslovakia, they've lived under socialism. They're not fans of socialism. They know what it is, and they are very much more pro-American and, of course, now always anti-Russian in ways, the U.S., we had socialists here that were so excited about visiting the Soviet Union and the workers' paradise. Well, Romanians lived under that system. So it's a very pro-free enterprise, pro-market, pro-American mentality. And then we treat them worse than we treat the French. And the joke is you go to France and you see how the French treat you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all this sort of fun stories about national issues. So.
And how long have you been in Canada now, Marina?
I came in 24 of April 2014, and I remember that because I was coming from Spain when it was sunny, and I came to Calgary where it was snowing in April, end of April. So yeah, that won't be unforgettable. But yeah, 2014, quite a bit of time.
Okay, and you came to Canada to be a student, to study, and so how? You probably mentioned this, but how long did it take you? It took you a couple of years to get to that point where you could go to Canada to become a student then as well?
Yeah, it took me quite a fair amount of time. First of all, when I decided, it was back in 2011, I think. It took me quite a fair of time to gather the documents, to provide my English test, to be accepted in a university. And then my first application, as mentioned, was denied. So I would say about 2-3 years to come with a visa student here. And yes, I came and I studied the environmental and energy law back at the University of Calgary.
And did it cost every step of the way? Was there extra fees and things like that as you were, gathering documents and applying to certain places? What, if so, what roughly was your total cost to get to Canada just so that you could spend more money studying?
Yeah, it cost me, especially, I can't remember, to be honest, the amount, just because at the time it was in the Romanian coin, and to be honest, I will lie if I will just put a sum here, but I do remember that the fact that the first time when I gathered all the documents and the fees at the university for my application to be processed, each university will charge you a fee just to process your application, and I remember at the time wasn't quite cheap, along with all the scanning, printing at the time. Wasn't everything digital. We had to send it through mail. So that was quite a bit of money involved there. And then I do remember that also when I applied for the visa to the Canadian government and I was rejected, my file actually was closed and I had to open another application with another fee, rather than just being reopened and reconsider my application when I applied the second time with the same documents. I think at the time, Canada, because I remember applying in November and then I reapplied in January, it was working with a pool. Once they get a number of persons who were allowed to travel to Canada, then they kind of close the files. But once the new year starts, they will enlarge the pool, if I'm not wrong at that time. And then as an international student here in Canada, I don't know how United States is, but the university fees are nearly double than if you'd be a PR or a Canadian citizenship. So what I paid for my studies there would have been maybe half of it if I would have been a PR or a Canadian citizen.
You could argue that the job of government when dealing with people who want to come here for travel or work visas or college is to find out, who's a terrorist, who's a criminal, and who's got an infectious disease. And that's a standard process. But now they're stopping people who just want to come and visit. And so that's you want to move toward economic freedom. You don't know what's going to result in that. Another friend from Bucharest who I met at the IES Europe seminars applied to work for a think tank in Washington State. She came over here she had a visa to visit. She did a job interview and they wanted to hire her, but they couldn't get the approval from the US government. You have to prove that no one here could do the same job and one thing and another. So that's an experience she didn't get and the benefit that think tank didn't get because she was the most qualified applicant. So you have a lot of those sorts of issues. And so, economists argue that labor mobility is the number one thing to help countries prosper. So, you move from the job market in rural Romania or Bucharest to Madrid or London or New York or Seattle, your wages are double. They're way higher. And your productivity, what you benefit for the company. The joke at Microsoft has long been that the number 2 language after English at Microsoft is Romanian because they've got so many Romanians working there. But that's, of course, all the people from India are speaking English. But we benefit, Microsoft benefits, the tech industry, half of their founders and top engineers are immigrants, many from Eastern Europe and formerly communist countries where science and technology was emphasized in the communist era. So we benefit from people coming here. We would have benefited from Marina being able to work in the US, but it was too complicated. And maybe she prefers Vancouver and who knows, but her aunt and uncle were in Calgary. But we benefit from the freedom of people to find the job that suits them best and the employers that want to hire them. And right now we have a fractured system that you could argue is unjust because we treat some people differently. We get in trouble for treating people differently based on the color of their skin or their religion, but now we treat them differently based on where they happen to have been born and what papers they have. And, it's a system that started after World War I. There were no restrictions of freedom of movement before World War I, maybe with Russia and Turkey. This passports are a temporary wartime measure put in during World War I. So, how do we return to a system? Ultimately, if Romania is prosperous, which it should be, people will want to go there. They'll have immigration to Romania rather than immigration. We want prosperity in Latin America and Eastern Europe. How do we get there? Freer trade, freer investment, and migration is one way to get there.
And
now, can the United States go to Romania just on a passport?
Yes, for now, but European Union decided that I think starting with May, they're still debating. The Canadians and Americans as well would need actually to pay as well an electronic visa as United States is asking for Spanish, for example. Now, if you as an American would go to Spain, you will need to have the passport, but also the electronic visa, and you'll have to pay for that because they said it's not quite a fair process either. So yeah, actually, my Romanian passport just expired. I can't travel anymore. It's less than 6 months. So I'm trying to renew because I'm planning to go and visit my parents, and I really don't want to pay. It's not a big fee, but it's So yes, as of now, they can freely go there, but from May they will have to have that electronic visa as well.
Okay.
And Also to reply, to just add something to Greg when he said
Yes.
that labor mobility, it actually goes towards the prosperity of the country. For me, labor mobility, it's actually also knowledge mobility and innovation, exchange of ideas. It's actually knowledge, it's power. So yeah, I would definitely see the benefit and looking always on a long term.
Okay.
Okay, well, for students that are interested in this case and want to talk more, we are available. I will be posting this on a economicthinking.substack.com page and have more of the economics of immigration. We're going to have a link to Radu Nikita's original talk on the Romania visa situation, which he gave at the First Look program. And it's one of many cases students could advance with the U.S. European country topic, but trade, investment, and travel and labor mobility are all steps toward economic freedom that are just, as well as create prosperity.
So Marina, we're sort of at the end of our time. Is there something else? Is there anything else that you would like to say, present, add to? So that we're not missing anything. I've had a great time, by the way, and
thank you.
So thank you for that. But what else is there that we might be missing?
Not that maybe we're missing. It's just the comment that I was always talking with Greg, or I'm not quite sure if with Greg or with other person, but I just wanted to say that I'm very grateful to be a dual citizen. But on the other side, I felt pretty sad, and especially a long time ago when sometimes in Spain, I was actually hiding to say my nationality just because we were seen as gypsies. And then when you go through the borders, yes, it's freedom of the movement, especially in Europe, but I could see in the officers' eyes when a French people was, just put an example in front of me and presenting their passport, and they were smiling, saying welcome. And then my sister and I were in a lineup, in a queue, and then we presented our passport. I could definitely see a change in their face. And that's pretty sad for me, and pretty sad that I had to hide at the time my nationality just because I was judged by the nationality rather than by who I am. Just a comment out there. Hopefully this will change, and I'm sure now it's changing, but yeah, not quite fun.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. Well, Greg, anything else to add for you?
I think it's been a pleasure knowing Marina and knowing your sister and other Romanians I've met, and young people from Bulgaria and Poland and other countries, Ukraine, and they deserve the prosperity that we enjoy, that we take for granted. I used to joke that the students, they wonder why Americans are so rich, have so much wealth compared to what they had growing up. And at first they thought it was because Americans are really smart. But then they met Americans and they, wait a minute. So there are institutions we have that protect property rights, that advance entrepreneurship and markets, and the institutional challenge Romania still has. They had communism, but then they had the communists all took down their communist label and called themselves social democrats, but they still were corrupt. So this corruption, it is endemic in Ukraine and in governments all over the world. Obviously, we have our own corruption problems in America, but it's so much worse in other countries. How do you improve it? Well, one is letting people out. They can see the world and they wonder, why do we have to put up with poverty in our country when these people in other countries that aren't working half as hard as we are seem to have everything? So we want justice and equality of opportunity around the world, and travel is a big part of that, of getting there.
Okay, well, it was such a delight, Marina, to meet with you online.
Same here.
And if you're ever in Colorado, that's where I live, in the Denver area, send me an email. You can come over and you can stay with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I roast my own coffee. We have a special Rehmke roast for Greg, and so I'll make you some really good coffee. So
let's see if we could bring Marina down to judge at the Colorado Christian debate tournament. So
that would be great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.